الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So thanking everybody. I thank you for everyone for being here. Alhamdulillah, this is the first time that we're doing Iman initiative, and I'm actually really excited. Thank you, E-Board, for actually giving me the opportunity to do this. And I just want to clarify something. I'm not a Shiite, I'm not an Imam, I'm not a scholar, so that means that I don't know everything, right? I'm just a brother like everybody else, and I just want to give back something to our community and hopefully develop a stronger community here at Steve Hall. So the theme for our first month with the Iman workshops is a search for the truth. Right, within this theme, we're going to be looking at the basic principles of Islam and their significance and why we follow Islam. What is the purpose of being a Muslim in the first place? Right. So the first topic for today is going to be the illumination of Tawheed, and within this halaqah, we should be able to answer the question: what is Tawheed? And basically, what is Tawheed, and why is it significant to us? Right. So this is in Arabic, right? This is the hadith which talks about the 5 pillars of Islam. It says, عن عبد الرحمن عبد الله بن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول بني الإسلام على 5 شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وحج البيت وصوم رمضان. Right? So the 5 pillars of Islam center around what? Testifying that there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad is his last and final messenger. Right? The next is performing the salat, performing the prayers, paying your zakat, which is a taxation on the Muslim ummah. So that we pay for those who are less fortunate, we help those who are less fortunate. Making the pilgrimage to Hajj at least once in your lifetime, and fasting in Ramadan. Those are the 5 pillars. But today I'm going to be focusing on the first pillar. Right, the first pillar, which is the shahada. So the thing about this hadith that Sayyidina Muhammad was describing with the 5 pillars, he was referring to the fact that even if one of these pillars are missing, right, the entire house of Islam falls. Therefore, if you don't have one of these pillars, if you don't complete all 5 pillars, right, your hajj, your salat, your sawm, your shahada, all of that, you can't have Islam. Therefore, you need to maintain these 5 pillars. These 5 pillars are very important. So with the shahada, right, we see this a lot, right? How many of you have seen this around? Like the whole calligraphy thing, and you see all these like pretty designs. How many of you have it in your house? How many of you understand what it says? Good, alhamdulillah, that's good. Alhamdulillah. So a lot of times people really don't know what it says. They just see it like this, and they're just like, wow, that's really cool. What does it mean? Well, in some instances it'll be Surah Al-Ikhlas, it'll be like different surahs, but in this instance it's the shahada, right? So the shahada, there are 2 parts to the shahada. The first part of the shahada is La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, in which you're saying that Allah is one. The second part of the shahada is Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Saying Muhammad Rasulullah is the Prophet of Allah. So there is no God but God, but Muhammad is his messenger. So I'm going to break this down now into 2. I'm going to be focusing on the first part, which is there is no God but Allah. And that in itself centers itself around Tawheed, right? There is no God but Allah. So that means that you only worship Him, you only follow what He says. There is no other like Him. He is the sublime, He is the ultimate, He is everything. Right? He created everything in this realm, He created everything in this dominion, and He is the Lord of all worlds. Right? Rabbul Alameen. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So he says that Allah, He is the only one, right? He's the one and the only. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Ahad, the word ahad is not wahid. Don't mistake it for one, right? It's not one, it's one within Himself. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be divided. Okay, so if somebody says somebody's one, right? Let's say Wala is one, right? She's one. If I take away her eye, or if I take away her arm, a part of her body, is she still wala? Yes, she's still wala. She's still a human being in front of you. So therefore Allah can't be one, but rather Allah is one within Himself. So that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be divisible. Therefore we remove the idea that the Holy Trinity exists. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nullifies that belief. Then He says Allah as-Samad. Allah as-Samad, which means that Allah the Eternal and the Absolute. Many times people will come across the question of, if Allah is the Lord of this realm, can there be another realm or another dimension in which there is another Lord? Right? Some people will ask that question, some people will wonder about that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nullifies that again. He says, no, I am the Lord of everything. Right? Allah the Eternal and the Absolute. Therefore He is the Rabb al-Alameen. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. So Allah does not give birth, nor does somebody give birth to Him. That also insinuates that that is when He differentiates Himself between us and Him. Right? Human beings are able to reproduce, we are born, and we have a beginning and we have an ending. Allah Azza wa Jalla does not have an ending or a beginning. Sayyidina Muhammad said that Surah Al-Ikhlas, right, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, is worth 1/3 of the Quran. Is worth 1/3 of the Quran. Therefore, if you read it 3 times, technically you've read the Quran entirely. There's a reason why it's worth 1/3 of the Quran, and it's basically because it centers around the science of Tawheed. Tawheed is an Islamic science, right, in which we recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, right? He's one within Himself. Right? In the Arabic language, Tawheed means to know that something is one. Theologically, it is referring to your absolute conviction, your absolute belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in fact one within Himself. Right? He is one. You don't worship anyone like Him. There is nothing else but Him. The science of Tawheed, the belief of Tawheed. Right? Because here's the thing about Tawheed. Tawheed, since in the Quran it's worth basically 1/3 of the Quran, you have to assume that this is basically 1/3 of this is what your core belief is going to be centered around. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. Correct? So when you have this central belief, you are able to branch off from that and actually invest yourself in Islam. So it all starts here. Right? It all starts here. So the oneness in the Lordship of Allah, that is the first part of Tawheed, and that is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. So you are acknowledging that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has control over all dominions, and He controls your fate. I get this question a lot. The concept of free will and predestination. Right? We hear about that a lot, especially among the Christian community. Right? You will hear this a lot in our theology classes here at Seton Hall. Right? People will talk about this in the Bible, the concept of predestination. Now, some Christian scholars believe that Allah has control over everything, right? You are predestined from the beginning. But there are others who will say that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not control anything. So the people are divided in that belief. In Islam, we take both beliefs, that human beings have free will and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls everything, we put it together. Therefore, when somebody asks you the question, why is in Islam those two concepts exist and it doesn't work? We say it does work, and here's why. Because for example, I'll tell you something. If human beings didn't have free will, then what's the point of the Day of Judgment? Yes or no? If we didn't have free will, if we just had predestination, there would be no point of the Day of Judgment. We would go immediately to hell or heaven or wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to put us. So going back to what I was saying about the concept of predestination. So when somebody says that, how does that work? You immediately point to the judgment day, right? You look at why we have the judgment day in the first place, because if we didn't, then there would be no point of free will. I'll give you another example. I'm a diplomacy major now, right? Let's say if I wanted to switch to pre-med, and I was just like, I had like this moment where I just saw my life flashing before my eyes, and I wanted to be a doctor and complete the dreams of my mother and my father, right? And just become a doctor and just do what they want me to do. So I switched to pre-med, and within 2 years the Seton Hall Medical School is supposed to be open. So I go to the Seton Hall Medical School, right? Get a 4.0 GPA. I'm amazing. I do everything perfectly, right? And like I'm an all-star student, mashallah. And then I get to the end and everything like that. I get to the end. I graduate. All this, right? I get to apply. I come to apply to my jobs, and nobody accepts me. I made the decision to become a doctor, but nobody accepted me as a doctor. And subhanallah, I go through 2 years, 3 years of just humiliation, just people not accepting me, and I don't know why. And then at the end of those 3 years, I switch my perspective on my field and I become a biomedical engineer. And somehow that clicks immediately, and I get like a perfect family, beautiful wife, beautiful house, beautiful kids, perfect life. All because I switched my perspective. But subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here's where his will intercedes amongst your free will. Right? So I chose to be a doctor. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had other plans. So He presented a hardship, let's put quotations on it, because it's not really a hardship. Because in reality, it was basically just a test. And He tested my faith, and He pushed me in another direction. And in that direction, I found success in my life. So in that same sense, when you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you believe that He has the ability to control your destiny. You believe that He has the ability, that He knows what is good for you. He knows all that there is and there ever will be. Right? The next is the oneness and the worship of Allah. Right? Tawheed al-ibadat. And this concept is that you only pray to Allah. Allah is, you don't worship anybody else but Allah. You don't believe in anybody else but Allah. In the same sense, you don't believe in charms. So let's say that this watch that I'm wearing right now, I call it my lucky watch. My lucky watch. And I believe that this watch will bring me luck. Right? I wear it before every test, and I get like hundreds or whatever, right? I get perfect scores every single time. And I'm wearing this watch, and I do all this kind of stuff before I take a test. Just because I think it's luck. This is considered bid'ah. And why? This is considered something that you added on to the deen. It's actually considered a minor shirk. Excuse me, not bid'ah, but it's a minor shirk. And it's because that you believe in something besides Allah that can control your will. So you know how we have the seal? Yeah, step on the seal. Okay, if you notice yourself avoiding that seal in the middle of Seton Hall, you have to step on it. You really have to step on it. Otherwise, you're committing a minor shirk. Because you shouldn't have the belief that if you step on a seal, you won't graduate. I know they drill that into the minds of every single freshman here. And I guess that's all you hear throughout private adventure and stuff like that. But what you need to whenever you hear somebody talk about luck, something is bad luck. If somebody says don't walk under a stepladder, you look at them in the eye and you walk right under a stepladder. Just to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls everything. You believe in Allah, you don't believe in that luck, right? The third science of Tawheed, the third subtopic of Tawheed is oneness in the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does this mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of His names is Al-Hayy. Al-Hayy, which means in Arabic, the living. Right? The living, right? In the same sense, we're also living, aren't we? We're living organisms. Otherwise, like, I really wouldn't be around if we weren't living. But think about it. Now, what composes a living body? What does a living organism need to survive? Oxygen. It needs an energy source. It needs heat. It needs shelter. Sometimes, and it also needs the ability to reproduce. Does this mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's also living, shares that same attribute? Because people will ask that. They'll be like, oh, He's al-Hayy, and we're also Hayy, so therefore we're together. All one team, all for one for all. That's what they'll say. But no, that's not the same thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a different form of living than we do, right? He lives in a different way. So when He lives in when people ask you that question, that's the response. He lives in a different way, right? So His attributes, you need to understand that His attributes are different than ours, that we are different than Him, right? So He is here and we're here, right? To say that we have the same attributes as Him is putting us on the same pedestal as Him, or not pedestal, but the same level. Excuse me. And that doesn't work. That completely goes against everything that we believe in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُوَ وإن يردك بخير فلا راد لفضله يصيب به من يشاء من بعده وهو الغفور الرحيم. عباد استغفر الله بعباده. I can't see without my glasses, I'm sorry. So the ayah, what's saying in this ayah is that if Allah wanted something, right? If Allah were to touch you with adversity, there is no remover of it except Him, right? So nobody can change your fate. Nobody can alter what you have in your life right now but Him, right? Therefore, your trust has to be invested in Him. Do you understand? So part of the shahada, when you say La ilaha illallah, you are testifying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that ability, right? He knows what's best for you. Therefore, you are trusting yourself into Him. You are trusting yourself into His faith. So whenever you go through a hardship, whenever you go through that sort of thing, you have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no repeller of any hardship but Him, right? There is no repeller of His bounty. So, when He wills for something to happen, He wills for that to happen. And if He wills for it for a reason, right? So the second part of the shahada is what? Shahadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Right? Sayyidina Muhammad is a slave and his messenger. So what this means is that Sayyidina Muhammad we're submitting ourselves to what Sayyidina Muhammad says. Therefore, that means the Quran and the Sunnah are both important in our core essential belief of Islam. Therefore, whatever Sayyidina Muhammad whatever Allah says to Sayyidina Muhammad, that's what we have to follow. That's what we have to follow. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Right? So he says, verily we have sent to every nation a messenger saying, worship Allah and avoid false gods. So by that sense that we have to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and by following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are also following His messengers and His messengers' messages. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again in the Quran talks about how He is closer to an individual than you may perceive. Right? So He says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Right? So we're saying that we have created man and know what whispers in his soul. So He knows your thoughts before you even make those thoughts. He knows everything that you're about to do and everything that you will ever do, and even before you think about it. Right? And He knows your destiny when you think about that, when you think about such thing. Therefore, He is closer to your heart than your own jugular vein. Doesn't mean He is necessarily in your heart. It means that He is closer to you in the sense that He knows everything that there is about you, and He knows everything that there ever will be of you. Right? So the point is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again in the Quran, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Right? So whosoever puts his trust in Allah, He will suffice for him. Therefore, your central belief in the shahada and this first pillar of Islam is what? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is where you put your trust. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is whom you put your faith in. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul alayhi salam are the prime example of where you should look for guidance, where you should look for a source of a message of Islam, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is where you find your salvation. And it is through this that you find the true illumination of Tawheed. Right? This is where you are able, once you hold firm to this belief within your heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes everything else in this deen easier for you and everything else in your life easier for you. But in order for this to happen, you need to hold firm to this belief, and you need to make sure that this belief never leaves your heart. Therefore, within Tawheed is possibly one of the most important aspects of belief in this religion, right? That is why Surah Al-Ikhlas is worth 1/3 of the Quran, right? That is why we pray 5 times a day. That is why we focus so much on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. That's why we focus so much on what is written down in the Sunnah. Because it all comes back to the concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ahad, right? Right? He's one within himself. And that is how you achieve the true illumination of Tawheed.